So we met in 1999 after I left Germany in the States, in Charleston. I started in a company down there, and he had just come back from a pretty bad knee injury. And
when you say you came back from a company there because you're a ballerina.
That's right.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I was. We were partnered up for Nutcracker out of all the ballets for the Snow Pas de Deux. And, I came from a big company. I was pretty arrogant, I have to say. And we were put together, and it was a struggle. So I didn't really like him at all at the beginning. I actually quite disliked him, and I was complaining about his abilities partnering me quite a bit. We were standing in the wings before our performance, and he turned to me and said, when we get married, not if we get married, when we get married, our kids could have a German, an American, and a Canadian passport. And I don't know what happened in that moment. I was like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, and you're just about to go on stage.
Yeah, which was the best thing ever because it took all the nervousness away. It was the best performance. Like all of a sudden we found we were a couple on stage. We weren't fighting each other anymore. And we had lots of compliment for that performance. However, that basically just tore down all the walls where I realized, wow, I know now why I'm here. It's because of him. I was actually engaged at that time to somebody else. That's why I, left to follow that man. And that engagement broke off within the next 2 months, basically. We just, we had a break after that Nutcracker performance, and we just, I started missing him, and I just couldn't put my finger on it. What is this? What is this feeling? Like I've never had this determination and the knowing that he's the one. Yeah, and we moved in March together and moved to Portland in the summer. Got married a year later, and that was it. Moved to Australia. We went through losing everything, all our investments in the States after building our dream ballet company, and that didn't work out. Now in hindsight, I think we've given up way too quickly. Speaking of love, I think ballet was my very first love because that's all I really wanted to do when I was growing up. And it kind of stopped or just diminished with everything that was put on us in order to become that dancer. And I didn't love it anymore in my late 20s. That's when I said, I can't do this anymore. Like when the pain gets worse than the love you have inside yourself for whatever it is, you stop. But yeah, so we went through that. We went through 3 pregnancies and, raising 3 beautiful boys. I just found out a few years ago, he had a little book that was given to him by his mother, I believe. And he wrote all the things in it that he wanted when he's grown up. I was in that book. I'm still in that book. The European blue-eyed, blonde-haired dancer with an accent, hopefully from Berlin. That's where I was supposed to be from. I was in there. I knew that when I wasn't spending time with him every day, because when you dance you're very close, you feed off of each other's energy, you're surrounded by whatever that person gives you, and I don't want to say you take it for granted, but you realize when it's not there anymore that it's missing. And that happened, and I fought it because this is not like that wasn't the plan.
Right.
It sure was not the plan. And I was never good in breaking other people's hearts. And so I but it all fell into place very strangely. Yeah. I forgot to mention that 7 years prior to us meeting, he actually came to Berlin and tried to audition at the very company I was a dancer at.
Okay.
They just wouldn't let him in the door because he didn't have an appointment. So we would have met 7 years prior to that. in Portland, Northwest Portland, in a parking lot, parking stall number 13. On his knees, we picked when we drove from Charleston to Portland, we stopped in Vegas and he took me to Tiffany's to just, look at rings. And he showed me the big ones with the big stones. I'm like, no, I'm not that girl. I don't.
Yeah.
I like the simple ones. And yeah, so that ring appeared out of his pocket. And it was raining. And it was beautiful. Yeah, I had a really, really uncomfortable day. I think it was the 29th of November and it was Nutcracker rehearsal time. And it really gave me a hard time when I started it. So he thought that was probably the best thing he could do for me to not make me feel like that I am loved. And we got married in Charleston.
Okay, you went back to Charleston.
Yeah, okay. In a beautiful church. Just thinking of that, when I was growing up in East Germany, I always said that I am getting married in a church. When I get married, I'm getting married in a church. And if you're not belonging to a church in Germany, you cannot get married in a church. That just doesn't work that way, right? The Germans are very particular. But it's possible in the US. You just have to find the right church.
Yes.
And so we did. After we had left Charleston, we spent about 6 months in Australia, in Sydney. And it was not my place to be. It was not my country to be. I didn't feel comfortable. The pressure that I felt from the people around me to believe into something that I didn't believe in at the time, or just on a different level. And the fact that I wasn't allowed to leave the country with my child for 10 years if I wanted to become, a permanent resident. So the immigration laws were quite different. So I said, nope, we are moving back to Germany. I know there's the basement of my mother's home. I was 6 months pregnant. And yeah, arrived in March, found a place to live in Berlin a few weeks later, tried to find a job for him. And then our oldest, Ethan, was born in 2004 in July on a full moon night. And then, yes, so from there, there was a reason why I left Germany. I knew when I was 13 that Germany is not the place for me. Mm-hmm. I don't know, I was born here, but it's not where I feel comfortable. So after visiting his in-laws in Victoria for a couple times with, flying 10 hours with a wee newborn, I was fun. I was like, this is it. I would like our children to have a really loving set of grandparents. And my mother isn't that kind of person. So I said, we're packing up and we're moving. And we did that within 2 months. I packed everything together and just moved in with them for 2 months, yeah.
And how long have you been in Victoria?
Since 2006.
Okay. So what is it that makes you successful, a successful couple?
His love. I am the most important thing in his life, more than he is. And I've never had that. There's nothing he wouldn't do for me.
Right.
Like he takes everything. If he knows, if I just say, I really don't want to, I don't even have to finish the sentence. He's doing it. It's a work in progress. You change. Totally. Yeah. We got married in our 20s. We're in our 40s now. We're different people. Yeah. And I have to say it was way easier in the beginning than it is now, because I have different expectations. I'm a different person. But I think what I've learned, I didn't grow up in a house where we would use the word I love you ever. I've never heard that ever from my mother. For me, being surrounded by that 24/7, but I actually, not in the beginning, but like 10, 15 years into the marriage, I started pushing it away, because you know how your subconscious then just, it all bubbles back up and old habits come in, and it's just like, no, that's not the truth. It's not the truth. So we had to really work on that. And it's, for me, I really still have to work on that myself, to really stop resisting and letting him in. Tell the people that you love, tell them as often as you can. Yeah, because you're not losing anything. Yeah. It's not going to hurt. It's just it feels different because we're not maybe not used to it all the time, and our ego just doesn't know what to do with it. And in order to keep us safe, we're just gonna stay right there versus really exploring what's on the other side.
Okay, great.